Tonight, when cars and bikes collide, who's to blame?
I think definitely the cyclist did not look behind and pulled straight out, so immediately I'd put a lot of blame on him.
Too close to parked cars and they open the door, it's our fault. If we're too far out in the road, we're too far out in the traffic and it's our fault.
New proposals that could see drivers carrying the can.
I think it'll just give a really bad message out there to cyclists that no matter what collision they're involved in, whether they're to blame or not, that they're in the clear.
And is it possible to convert a four-wheel fanatic to two?
Look, I've driven a McLaren F1, which was easier than this. Too much choice. 18 gears, I don't know which one I'm in.
Traffic jams, parking tickets, speed cameras, the spiralling cost of fuel. All drivers pay for the privilege of using the roads, but some don't feel like they get much in return for their money. And an increasing number of them are swapping their cars for these. According to the converts, bicycles are clean, green and cheap to run. But the rise of pedal power has presented motorists with a new threat.
As more and more bicycles jostle for space on our streets, the number of collisions involving cyclists has also risen sharply. Now some cycling campaigners are pressing for a change in the law, which would make drivers, or at least their insurers, automatically responsible for all accidents involving cyclists, no matter whose fault it actually was. But is it fair?
Yes, according to cycling groups who argue that it'll make drivers more responsible for their actions and our roads a safer place for bicycles and their riders. But perhaps unsurprisingly, some motorists are against the proposed changes.
You know as well as I do that there you are sitting at your traffic lights, the light is green, you go across and there he is, coming down at 25 miles an hour, bang, into your car. Whose fault is that? Is it going to be yours?
So who really is responsible for some of the most commonly reported incidents involving a car and a pedal bike? We've enlisted the help of 6 expert panellists to help us find out. Using a closed road and with the help of trained stunt professionals, we're going to recreate 3 collisions. Our panel's job will be to decide where the blame lies for each crash. It's time to meet them. First up is Gail Porter, who along with her 7-year-old daughter Honey is a keen charity cyclist. Motoring journalist and Fifth Gear presenter Vicky Butler-Henderson. Actor, TV presenter and co-founder of the Liverpool Cycle Centre Simon O'Brien. Ex-professional racing car driver Tiff Niddell. Chris Peck, policy coordinator for the Cyclist Touring Club. And last but not least, with 20 years behind the wheel of a taxi to his name, it's London cabbie Steve McNamara. Introductions over, it's time to get started.
Our first crash reconstruction is called the rear end, and this is when a cyclist pulls out to pass a parked car and is hit by a car coming from behind. Let's have a look. So, the rear end. Anybody have any strong initial reactions on who might be to blame there?
I think definitely the cyclist did not look behind and pulled straight out, so immediately I'd put a lot of blame on him.
Should the car have been aware that a cyclist might be pulling out from
I think you can only make so many assumptions as to what people are going to do, and the guy just pulled out with no signals, 70% his fault.
What do you think? What do you think, Simon? 70% the cyclist's fault?
Yeah, I would utterly disagree with that, because after all, the cyclist isn't pulling off. The cyclist is already on the road. He's just going along. Looking at it from a cyclist's point of view, I would say that that cyclist has got a death wish, because he should have looked over his shoulder, no question about it. But in my mind, how I interpret the law, the vehicle that hits the other one from behind is to blame, is it not?
Yep. Chris, I see you agree.
The driver should always feel that they should be responsible for what's going on in front of them. And in this sort of circumstance, the driver would have seen the cyclist alongside and should have anticipated that maybe the cyclist wasn't a particularly experienced cyclist, could have been a kid, could be about to jump out in front of them. So really the driver's got to be aware of what is going on in front of them and be ready to anticipate that.
Cyclist not really doing his job on the road there,
The car
Dale.
should be more aware of what's happening in front of him. There is something in front of him and he should be taking extra precaution.
OK, let's have a quick show of hands then, shall we? Who thinks there that the main responsibility lies with the driver for that accident?
The cyclist.
And let me guess, who thinks the fault lies with the cyclist?
The majority with the cyclist.
Oh, and you're... Well, so 3, 2 and undecided.
Hovering on that one, hovering. Well, I just think it was a 50-50 instance that both could have avoided the accident.
With tensions between different road users seemingly at an all-time high, can anything be done to heal the growing rift between drivers and peddlers? Motoring journalist and former Top Gear presenter Quentin Wilson is a man with a well-known passion for petrol power.
One of the really wonderful things about driving is that you are cocooned, you are protected, you are insulated from the wild and whirling world. It's a kind of womb-like place, isn't it? And it's something that I would find very hard to give up. The prospect of cycling, for instance, in Manchester or Birmingham or perish the thought, London, for me, would be as much fun as a sinus wash. I think I'd rather cut off bits of my anatomy.
That's a pity, because today, in the interests of harmony, Quentin has agreed to swap his usual mode of transport for something a little different.
Look, I've driven a McLaren F1, which was easier than this. Too much choice. 18 gears, I don't know which one I'm in.
So will confirmed car buff Quentin be converted to the joys of pedal power?
See, there's a cyclist that's normally dressed. I think I've been stitched up. Tell you what, these taxi drivers are knightly, absolutely saintly. I shall never not tip a London cabbie again.
So far, so good then. We'll come back to Quentin a little later to see how he's getting on. As more and more motorists, perhaps prompted by the current recession, take to two wheels, the number of accidents involving bicycles has also soared. Between April and June this year, 820 cyclists were killed or seriously injured on our roads. That's a 19% rise on the same period last year. No wonder then that for road users like Manchester cabbie John Hennessy, who have no option but to remain behind the wheel, pedal power is such a hot topic.
There's plenty of cyclists in Manchester with it being a university city, but I do believe that they're not cycling like they should be. They're not insured, they're using the road like I'm using it. I have to pay tax, my fuel bills have gone up, and they're just driving and riding around and nobody seems to stop them breaking the law.
John had owned his new taxi for just 3 months when it was ploughed into by a cyclist who jumped a red light. The collision did £800 worth of damage to John's cab. Rather than invalidate his no-claims bonus, he paid for the repairs out of his own pocket. The cyclist who caused the accident was momentarily knocked unconscious by the impact, but made a full recovery.
If I'd have been going through that red light and I'd have hit the cyclist, they'd have thrown the book at me. Luckily, I had 2 witnesses that stopped and said, it was nothing to do with you. He went through a red light and hit me. But otherwise, he'd have probably almost put me out of business.
Nobody intends that the current proposals to change civil law should give cyclists a free hand to ignore the rules of the road. But if the new proposals had been in place, and had there been no witnesses, John's insurers would have been liable for all the damage to both car and bike, even if the cyclist was actually in the wrong.
I think it'll just give a really bad message out there to cyclists that no matter what collision they're involved in, whether they're to blame or not, that they're in the clear. And it would just cost the motorist so much money. It's just ridiculous.
Back on the streets of London with our very own lycra lout, Quentin Wilson.
Potholes are a big issue, but you do feel free. You feel incredibly free. If you behave, you ride sensibly, you don't take any risks. It's not the suicide pact that I'd imagine. Maybe it's the clothes.
So what have a couple of hours in the saddle done for his opinions on cycling and cyclists?
I am a complete convert. Cycling is great. I feel wonderful. It's quick. It's easy. But you get corrupted very, very quickly. You go through red lights. You go on the pavement. You go down one-way streets because you can. Look, you're going to say this is a cliche, and he would say that, but cycle like a motorist, and you'll be fine.
In fact, Quentin was so impressed that since the filming, he's gone out and bought himself a bike. And the best news of all is that it fits comfortably into the boot of his Range Rover. At the Tonight test track, our stunt team are preparing for their second collision.
Next up then, one of the most common accidents involving cars and bikes, known as the left hook. This is where a vehicle is turning left, indicating to turn left. A cyclist undertakes the car on the inside. The driver doesn't see the cyclist as he or she takes the corner, and bang, there's a collision. Who is to blame? Let's take a look. So that was the left hook. Where does the fault lie in that situation? Who'd like to start? Simon?
Pretty obvious, isn't it, cyclists?
Yeah, it is fairly obvious. Technically, I think at that point I would blame the cyclist, but I think when you look at that situation, it tells you an awful lot about the problems the cyclist faced on the road, because you would assume that that car driver had already seen that cyclist, so with just a little bit more patience, a little bit more courtesy, that situation would never have arisen.
I mean, Steve, that car driver must have seen the cyclist. He should be wondering, where is he in my mirrors, surely?
The golden rule is, on the right it's overtakers, on the left it's undertakers. And there's only one way you're going if you undertake on a bike like that, and that's to the undertakers. And that was just blatantly the cyclist's fault.
Chris, stand up for your cyclists.
Well, in this case, it looks as though the cyclist is in the wrong. The cyclist should not undertake a car when it's moving. That's not what we're supposed to do.
Simon?
Well, I'm just sticking to my guns originally that, what we've seen here is a demonstration of the aggression shown by car drivers, the determination to make that turn and just save 2-3 seconds off their journey, rather than being aware you just passed a bike. So maybe just see where they are. So no, that's why I think it's very ambiguous.
Lack of attention by a cyclist, more attention, you save your life. So,
absolutely, absolutely, yeah.
What about the iPod
right.
listed? Does cyclists think you should be allowed to have music in your ears?
I think it's a nuts thing to do.
All agreed on that?
Yes, agreed.
It's a silly thing to do. It's not illegal. And I don't think you should say it, because you wouldn't ban deaf cyclists. You're allowed to listen to music in your car.
We can hear other sounds.
No, you can't. Not in your car. With your glass box around you, with your stereo on full blast, you can't hear anything. And you love it like that.
I can hear the scratch of a handlebar down my side.
Anyway, that's nothing to do with this.
There seems to be some level of agreement going on here. Let's have a quick vote on it then. Who thinks the cyclist is to blame there? Definitely the bit grudging
case,
there, Chris.
75% in this case.
And it's the sort of manoeuvre I would never do anything like that, because it's
stupid thing to do.
Thing.